It is about you. You are the selling point, and the landscape is changing. So be your authentic self because no one wants to go to work being miserable all day. Look at your own resume, look at your own LinkedIn, and look at your impact and what you have provided for that other company. And if you write things in that context, you're going to talk to the next employer.
In my opinion, it's about giving the customer what they really want and just blowing their mind once they get it. And that's what I really love to see, honestly.
Get people to do more of home cooking, home cooked meals, healthy meals, so we can all live long and happy.
I'm very proud to be a mom because not for nothing, women are amazing.
Oh my God, the sacrifice. And how we make it look so easy.
I was just telling Joanne before we got on the call, I said, I had to run from my daughter's school. They had an Easter egg hunt. I said, all right, Mom, I gotta go to work. But, you know, just as moms, we make it happen, you know, supernatural abilities. We are the example for them, you know, and I know that with them being a better version of us.
You have to try. You never know how creative you are until you try. Because I didn't think I was creative. I found my creative side during a horrible time in my life.
Hello. Welcome to the Juneteenth family. It is Thursday and we are excited. Thank you so much for joining us on today. We have a very special guest and we're going to be blessed on today. This is a week before Christmas, so I hope everyone has been getting what they need to get. Shameless, I have not purchased my items yet, and yeah, my kids were like, so I thought we weren't going to get gifts last year, but then, you know, the night before all these gifts appeared, and I was like, yeah, that's what happened. So is that going to happen again this year? And I was like, maybe something like that. So if you are like me and haven't done your Christmas shopping yet, I hope that you do get that done on this weekend in preparation for the holidays. And I hope that you are also spending it in good company with friends and family during this time. So we're going to get right into the trenches of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to introduce to you our guest for today, which is Phillip Woolfolk. So welcome. He is a visionary leader, a speaker, and an author of Triumph in the Trenches, Navigating Success for Black Professionals. With his extensive experience in alternative lending, corporate leadership, and personal empowerment, Phillip is dedicated to helping professionals and businesses overcome challenges, build sustainable success, and create meaningful legacies. And that is exactly what we need in this space for a lot of us, because we are challenged in so many different ways as business owners. And one of the reasons why I even went into coaching myself was for this particular reason, because I saw a lot of the inadequacies that were happening in our community. So I am grateful and looking forward to hear about the key topics you're going to be talking about: building sustainable businesses and fueling legacy aspirations, overcoming systemic barriers and corporate challenges, turning lived experiences into actionable strategies for growth, and empowering professionals to achieve their goals. So welcome to the platform. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. A couple of things before we get started. First, I'd like to thank your assistant, Raina, who's very helpful in getting me all queued up for today. I appreciate it. And also, I hope I don't see you in the news as one of those folks fighting over the last item on the shelf for Christmas presents.
No, not at all. I will get my kids some underwear. I fight for any items, so you definitely will not see me for that one.
Excellent. Very good. Very good.
So I'm going to bring up your presentation that you have. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're going to be talking about as I do that?
Oh, sure. So, you know, with my background, I spent about 25 years or so in the banking industry, and then more recently, I served on the board as the board treasurer for about 4.5 years or so for the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. And then I transitioned from the board to become the chief operations officer for the chamber. Did that through about the middle of this year, May or so, and now basically still working with the chamber. Both my businesses, one is Main Street Advisory LLC, which is my alternative lending space, and the other is Phillip Speaks LLC, which is my speaking business where I do my speaking and writing under that umbrella. I also serve on the with the chamber, filling in for the founder, president, and CEO John Harmon on the Empowerment Hour radio show, which airs once a week,
Nice.
where we basically interview members of the chamber and have them be able to expose their business. So I spent a lot of time providing access to capital and facilitating businesses' ability to gain access to the funding that they need to be able to grow and expand their businesses. So my talk today is going to really be geared more toward the business growth and prosperity message as it relates to access to capital and being able to utilize some of those paradigms to grow and expand your business and build a legacy of profitability and create wealth for your family.
Well, I love that. And I am getting my paper and my pen because I know that there are going to be some really good nuggets, and I'm going to give you the floor and I'm going to jump off. So
Thank you.
Backstage.
Thank you very much. So we could transition to the next slide, please. So the agenda today, we're going to cover access to capital, the growth of your business, personal growth, profile for building a successful business through building successful business credit. And then we'll talk a little about hunger and my call to action. Next slide. So sources, when it comes to sources for access to capital, most businesses, especially in the African-American community, without access to, wealthy relatives and folks who have funding in terms of being able to support your aspirations to start a business, most of us are starting a business with our personal assets and, savings and investments, possibly insurance, and maybe a couple of friends who ultimately end up serving as partners. And we'll cover the rest of this throughout the presentation. Next slide. So personal assets, there are folks I'm sure that you're aware of if you're in business, and you may have done it yourself, who basically established their business with personal savings. They've established their business, maxing out their credit cards. And that's typically how you start when you don't have access to venture capital or other types of funding. Next slide. So on the traditional sources side, you have basically commercial banks. They typically have the larger networks than some of the smaller banks. Sometimes they may have better rates and pricing. But one of the things you have to take a look at when you're looking for funding is whether or not you fit the profile of the entity that you may be going to for funding. And so on average, all across the country, when you sort of pool all the commercial banks together, the average asset size is about $84.8 million, and the average loan size is about $663,000. And the reason that's important is because if you're going into a commercial bank and you're looking to borrow, say, $10,000 or $20,000, they typically are not going to assign a credit officer to you for a smaller loan. So, you're not going to get a relationship manager if you're looking for a $10,000, $20,000 loan. You're typically going to end up with possibly a credit card application, or you might end up with, if they have a small business loan product, with a one-page application or something, someone in the branch might hand you one of those. Next slide. So then you have your community banks. They're typically a little smaller. Sometimes they may have lower fees. They have typically more localized decision making. So you can typically meet folks who can actually make a decision on your loan there. I know one of my experiences as a real estate investor, I recall going into a small community bank where I was able to meet with not only the relationship manager, but once the relationship manager reviewed my package and my background, he walked me across the hallway and introduced me to the president of the bank. So I left that bank that day with $100,000 line of credit. That's probably would not have happened if I were at a larger commercial bank. Number one, the decision making might not have been localized, and they would have probably had a more strenuous system of, primary and secondary sign-offs in terms of who had to sign off on the loan and how many folks would have to have been involved. Whereas in a smaller community bank, the decision maker was right in the building, and I was able to get a decision before I left that day. Next slide. And then you have credit unions. Credit unions, I find, average loan size is typically much smaller, and they view folks that come to them more as members as opposed to clients or customers. So they're very member centric in terms of how they engage with folks who are members of their credit union. There are some credit unions now that are doing business lending, but they're typically, I would say, more involved in auto financing and residential mortgages, home equity loans, personal loans, that sort of thing. But if you're a member of a credit union, it's and especially if you're looking for smaller funding, something under $100,000, I would say it's a great idea to have a conversation with your credit union. Next slide. And then you have private lenders, and sometimes when you talk about private lenders, the subject of hard money lending comes up, and higher interest rates, and it depends on what you're looking for, how quickly you need the funding, and how you're going to be able to engage that funding to capitalize on return on investment. So I'll give you a little example. So when I first started in the real estate business as a real estate investor, my very first loan was 16.5%. And so I do not have the typical fear that I find when I speak to folks who are entrepreneurs. A lot of times they're very hesitant and reluctant when you get outside of the norm as it relates to interest rates. So for example, if current interest rates are 6 or 7%, and you present someone with a opportunity for funding at 14%, then a lot of times they're not interested in. So as an example, for me, during the pandemic, the banking industry and most traditional credit sources really began to pull back on funding. And so in times of uncertainty, it's typical that traditional lenders will do that because they want to minimize their risk, and they want to kind of see, well, what's this market going to do? What's going to happen? And how can we mitigate any risk that we would take in terms of funding? So as an investor, one of my concerns was, I don't know what's going to happen during the pandemic, like everyone else. And I don't know whether or not my residential tenants or commercial tenants are going to run into hiccups, maybe not be able to make their rent payments, their lease payments. And so what I decided to do was reach out to a private lender. I ended up with a 2-year interest-only loan at 14%. The great thing was that I was able to obtain those dollars within about a week. And I got $50,000 as a cushion to basically serve as a backstop in case any of my tenants ran into any economic hardship. That would not create a hardship for me, and I would not have to use personal assets to basically cover mortgages, taxes, homeowners insurance, and all those various things, and maintaining the properties. As luck would have it, I ended up not really needing the funding. Everybody worked out fine in terms of tenants. I waived the late fees rather for folks. I wasn't charging late fees throughout the pandemic, and most folks were able to pay either they paid half their rent around the first of the month and the other half a couple of weeks later, but everybody worked out okay. And that $50,000 ended up being an investment. I ended up using it for other investment, and because it was a interest only loan, and I paid it off in about 18 months. What the cost of it was for me was minimal, because it gave me some assurance that I would be okay during the pandemic and be able to ride it out for a while if things went south. So you have to really think about, when you're thinking about interest rates, and you're thinking about whatever you're doing with those dollars from an investment standpoint, the question you have to ask yourself is, if I obtain X number of dollars at a certain interest rate, am I going to be able to deploy that capital where it's going to be a profitable situation for me? And whether you're a contractor or a builder or a real estate investor, or you're a merchant, $50,000 might get you a significant discounts on your inventory, and so your margin in terms of for profitability might be significantly higher. So paying a slightly higher interest rate might be something that would work for you. So you have to just be flexible in terms of your thinking about interest rates and where you're sourcing your capital. Next slide. Hard money lenders, I kind of lump them a little bit together with the private lenders. Typically, a lot of similarities between the two. I've dealt with both, and they tend to allow you to access your funds fairly quickly, so you can close quickly. You have shorter terms. They don't do 10-year, 15 and 30-year mortgages. Typically, you're going to have access to those dollars from anywhere from 12 months to maybe 3 years. And sometimes it's a principal and interest payment each month, depending on the lender. Most times when I've done it, I've been able to structure it where I'm paying interest only, and then I pay back the principal with the upside of whatever return on that investment has been from wherever I've placed the investment. Next slide. Then you have asset-based lenders. They tend to have pretty quick approvals as well, and they will secure their loan with business assets such as accounts receivable. So if you're in a business where you have a 30, 60-day accounts receivable ledger, where businesses that you do business with are owing you a certain dollar amount, and you have a good history of collecting those dollars in a reasonable amount of time, then an asset-based lender may be a good source for you and allow you to be able to utilize your accounts receivable as your collateral, as opposed to having to pledge harder assets like real estate. Next slide. Then the other sources of capital that you always want to be aware of is the public sector, governmental entities. So on the federal government side, you have SBA 7A type loans, which are good for folks who have decent credit. A lot of times the SBA and the federal government doing those types of loans, they typically want collateral. One of the drawbacks sometimes is that they will over collateralize their loans, and so your equity will be kind of gobbled up into those loans until you pay them off. Then they have the 504, which is a real estate loan, which allows you to be able to acquire property where your business is going to be located and operated from. And then most states have an economic development funding source. So in New Jersey, we have the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. New York has an Economic Development Council and Economic Development Corporation. And most states will have that as a opportunity. And then you have funding through your county and also your local municipality. A lot of cities, especially in urban areas, may have an urban enterprise zone, and those zones sometimes will offer discounted interest rate type loans for folks who are located in those zones. Sometimes for folks who may not even be located in the zones, they may have a separate pot of funding for folks who are hiring folks who are located in those zones. So you want to take a good look at the landscape, wherever you happen to be, to see what the opportunities are out there. And sometimes there may also be opportunities for grants. But one quick note I'll make about grants is if you're running a business, you really can't rely on grants to fund, grow, and expand your business. If you have an opportunity and you're fortunate enough to obtain a grant, that's fine. But I would not recommend you hold off on your growth and expansion plans for grant funding, especially if you're in a situation where you're eligible and can qualify for traditional funding or some other funding that guarantees that you're going to have the funding to grow and expand your business, as opposed to putting your plans on hold until that grant comes through. Next slide. And then access to capital. One of the things I talk to folks about is the ability to leverage your dollar. So what I mean by that is if you're acquiring real estate, let's say, for example, and the property is $100,000, then you can leverage that acquisition where you don't need $100,000. Maybe your lender will allow you to make that acquisition with a 25% down or 20% down, and that way you're able to acquire that property with a lot less out-of-pocket funding. Also, if you have other assets, I typically recommend for people, I'm not a financial advisor or planner, but I can share with you what I've done that's been quite successful for me, and that is being able to utilize life insurance as a capital source. During the 2008 economic crisis and the downturn in the economy that happened back then, banks also pulled back on their credit. And at the time, I happened to be rehabbing 3 properties. And all of a sudden, I went from being someone who could walk in the bank and walk out with a check to basically banks saying, we're not interested in doing that at the moment. And so the good thing is I had built a, what I call my own mini bank in the form of cash value life insurance. And if you're familiar with cash value life insurance and you have an investment vehicle tied to that, you're able to sort of grow those assets off to the side as you're making your payment for your life insurance. Part of it can go toward your life insurance piece, and part of it can go toward investing. So that piece grows. And so I was able to basically secure my own funding through borrowing the money from myself, basically through my insurance policy. So that is another mechanism you want to add to your portfolio of ensuring that when you need funding, you have access to it. Next slide. The other thing about being an entrepreneur is being prepared. And one of the things we say to folks all the time is, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And that basically means that if you're going to be looking for funding at some point, there are some things that you're going to need to be able to share with the lender in order to be able to facilitate that funding. And there's simple things like your tax returns, your bank statements, a bio or resume of the principles of the business. You're going to have to provide typically some information on the business in terms of its profitability. So there's a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet. And then I typically recommend to people that you have some sort of summary. Could be a 1-pager. If it were a business plan, it would be part of your executive summary that basically lays out what it is you plan to do. What are you going to do with the funds if you obtain those funds, and how those funds are going to impact your business from a growth perspective, so that the lender has some idea that you thought out what you're going to do and how you're going to really engage those funds in your business to move you forward. You also want to be prepared if you have any blemishes on your credit, to be able to explain those in a way that the lender will understand and agree with. And sometimes I know in this atmosphere, post-pandemic, people have blemishes on their credit that's related to hospitalization and illnesses and whatnot. lenders are a little more, a little less stringent now than they were in the past with blemishes related to hospitalizations and illnesses, especially in situations where folks may not have had health insurance. So just be prepared to share your story and have the lender be able to understand what it is you're doing, what your past has been, and what you're looking to do in the future. Next slide. So I talk about a mindset for growth and sustainability, and there's a couple of things that kind of come into that, and part of it is strategy and basically being able to think about your business in a way that's going to allow you to grow and sustain it. I talk about kind of graduating from being the vice president of everything to becoming the CEO of your company and the CEO of your life, quite frankly. And it's difficult for you to be able to do that when you're doing every job. So as an example, let's say you have a company and your strong suit is client acquisition and business development. So you go out, you present your offerings, and you get a client. And because you're a one man or one woman shop, you then go back to the office or back to your place. And now you're the one that has to fulfill whatever it is you sold. So whether it's something that has to be manufactured, something that has to be shipped, something that has to be assembled, whatever the case may be, if it's a situation where you're providing professional services, then you're the individual that are providing those professional services. So in a nutshell, if you are really good at client acquisition and business development, and now you are doing other things to fulfill your obligation to a client, that means the time, energy, and effort that you're spending fulfilling that contract is time, energy, and effort that's not being spent on finding the next client. So you are in effect, minimizing your growth and your revenue prospects because as the top business development client acquisition person, you're now doing other things that's interfering with your ability to grow the business. So I say all that to say that you need to be able to develop a team that allows you to do what you do best so that your business can continue to grow and prosper and get your business to a place where you can expand your revenue and also continue to satisfy your clients and meet their expectations. Now, the other thing from a mindset standpoint and sustainability is adding additional revenue streams. So you can look at your business and determine, are there other avenues, are there other pieces, are there other products or services that you can offer that allow you to add additional revenue streams over your key or your main product or service that you might be offering. Next slide. So for systems of sustainability, this is one way you grow and expand your business, and that is to basically have systems in place that allow you to be able to do whatever it is your key or core competency is, and be able to solidify other support. So you do that through technology, management systems and expertise, third-party services. You may hire someone to be on your team on a part-time basis. You may have third-party services in the form of a virtual assistant. I work with a lot of folks who have virtual assistants who basically help them to be able to move their business forward and frees them up from some of the day-to-day operational tasks that can get in the way of your ability to bring in the next client and continue to grow your revenue. And so you really have to think about those costs as investments in your business, and the return that you get from doing those kinds of things is typically position yourself to be able to grow your revenue and to be able to sustain it. So there's not an interruption in the revenue stream while you're trying to fulfill a contract or provide the service or product that you're offering to the client. So you're really looking to work your way out of a job in terms of the day-to-day operational piece and transition yourself into C-suite, where you can start getting results that you get when you're thinking and operating more strategically. Next slide. So I have this mindset that I call think, act, manifest. And what it really boils down to is building a plan around what it is you're planning to try to do and trying to achieve. It's like a strategic road mapping. My family and I recently came back from a road trip to Florida, and you can't get to Florida without a road map. And likewise, you can't get to your destination of a successful, profitable, sustainable business without some sort of roadmap. So you need to recruit, hire, train, contract to get the talent that you need to be able to execute your plan. And then you can manifest your strategy and scale your business, and by basically getting out of your own way. And, when I was growing up, one of the things my mother used to always tell us and share is that you can't live in this world by yourself. And I can tell you from years of experience as an entrepreneur, as a real estate investor, as a private placement investor, you cannot do it alone. And the more support and the better your team is, the more you have the ability to grow and expand and sustain yourself. Next slide. So here are some of the resources. I know some of the folks on the call are from New York, some from New Jersey, possibly Pennsylvania, and some other areas around the country. In New York, there's the Empire State Development. Their website is here. Then you have the New York State Economic Development Corporation. In New Jersey, you have the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority and the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. All of these programs that are tied to the state. You can also check for economic development, other opportunities on the county level, wherever you happen to live, and also local resources in these cities and towns that you may live in or operate your business. These typically have resources. A lot of the resources can be just information that is very helpful, and you can access a lot of the information for free because it's we're all paying for this through our tax dollars. And so you want to be able to utilize those resources. Some of these resources also from time to time have grants. So you want to have these on kind of automatically on your radar to check in periodically just to see what's out there in terms of resources. Sometimes resources are available from on a grant basis based on industry. Based on size of business, based on location, based on who you serve, who you hire, a number of different opportunities that might be available. So you want that to keep that on your radar and check periodically so you have the information that you need because sometimes there are opportunities out there that can be of huge benefit that don't cost you anything. Sometimes it's free money. Sometimes it's low interest rate money, and sometimes it might just be information or bid opportunities if you want to bid on certain types of contracts. Next slide. Here's some concepts to consider. You running a business. One of the things you want to master the use of is access to other people's capital. And so I have this question: who's really good at this? And if you think about it, if you have a bank account, if you have a checking account, a savings account, you know that these days you're getting like 0.0010% or something like that on your money. So I have banks at the very top of the list of being masters at using other people's money because, of course, you may be getting 0.0010% on your savings or your any interest instruments that you're getting in from the bank. But of course, you cannot go into the bank and get a loan at 0.0010%. So they're utilizing our dollars. They make their money making loans. One of the streams certainly is making loans, and they do that by deploying low cost capital, which they get from us when we deposit funds in their bank. The other concept is mastering the recycling principle of money. And the way I view that is this: if you have a profitable business and you are generating cash flow, and the cash flow is allowing you to meet your expenses of the business, is allowing you to pay yourself a salary or stipend, then you have this ability to recycle some of the positive cash flow that you receive from your business and to cycle those dollars into other avenues to be able to generate other revenue streams. And so that's one of the things that you want to be able to do. Creating your own bank. I talked a little bit about having your own mini bank. I do that personally in the form of cash value life insurance. There might be other avenues that allow you to do that as well. But you want to have a backup plan as it relates to accessing capital when you run into a situation where accessing capital through traditional sources might go away temporarily because of whatever is happening at the moment in the economy. And you want to be able to ride out those economic shifts that take place from time to time. And the folks who have the most resources tend to be able to ride out economic downturns longer. And sometimes those economic downturns create opportunities for acquiring other assets, whether it's real estate or businesses or whatever the case may be. So you want to be in a position to, during the good times, to position yourself to make it through, not only make it through, but be able to thrive during difficult times and be in a position to make financial moves that are beneficial for your own wealth creation during those economic shifts. Next slide. So I work with some businesses, helping them to establish business credit. And so I have a couple of slides here to kind of talk a little bit about the elements of going about that and sort of profiling what you need to have in place. So most times when you're financing, your personal guarantee is where it starts. And that means you're getting a loan. You may have a business. You may not be in a position to borrow money in the name of your business or under your business ID number because you have not established the ability to do that. So you're typically, the loans that you get are going to be loans that you personally guarantee. Once you get a credit score of 680 or higher, and you maintain a history of on-time payments, your credit card utilization is 10% or less, the age of your credit is 3 years or greater, you have at least 10 accounts or more on your credit profile, and you have minimal inquiries, and you have trades that you might have through various stores that offer you trade lines. Those trade lines benefit, especially if they're reporting to the credit bureau. Those trade lines in the name of your business will help you build a stronger credit profile, and that will eventually position you to borrow larger sums of money. Next slide. So additionally, there's some things that you can do that also enhance your ability to get business credit. A lot of people are not aware of the fact that there are probably 100 or so different components that go into the business credit profile. And as a lender takes a look at your credit from a business standpoint, they're looking at certain things. Your business address may have an impact. So if you're using a PO box, if you're using your residence, sometimes that will cost you some points away from your ability to obtain credit in your business name. your business phone number. I have here a couple of examples. ipostal.com is a way for you to get an address that is a business location address. Grasshopper.com is a avenue for a business phone, so you're not using your personal phone or your cell phone or your residential phone. If you have a domain name, you want to be able to establish that and secure that. GoDaddy.com is one avenue for that. I also see a lot of folks who use personal email platforms for their business. So you may have a Gmail account, a Verizon, AOL, one of those. If you have a business, you want to establish a website and establish a domain that has an email address that is consistent with that domain. That's one of the things that lenders also look at that will detract from your ability to get business funding. You definitely need a federal tax ID number, and you can get that through irs.gov if you have not done that already. If you're operating as a sole proprietor, you're operating with your social security number, and you want to be able to grow and transition away from that. Most people, a lot of business people, are familiar with obtaining a DUNS number. This has also been replaced in some instances by a unique entity ID, which is created through the sam.gov website. You can also establish your business on Google so that your website and your domain is accessible and that people can find you easily. And you want to make sure that you have a business bank account. You want a merchant account if you're whether you have a product or service. You want people to be able to pay you using credit cards, and you need a platform that allow you to be able to accept and process those payments. If you're selling products, one of the things you'll discover is if you're accepting credit cards, your ability to sell more to people goes up when you have the ability to accept other forms of payment other than just cash. You also want to establish, I talked a little bit earlier about trade lines. You have nav.com, NavBoost, BizCredit. You have Uline and Granger, Quill. These are office supplies and business supply type places that offer 30-day credit, 60-day credit, and report to the credit bureau, which will help you to build your business credit. Next slide. And then on the personal growth side, you have folks there may be some folks on the call who don't necessarily have a business at this point. Maybe they have that proverbial good job, and that's fine. And so I have a listing of things here that you can do on the personal side as well that can help you. One of the things you want to do is become more intentional with your spending, your saving, investing, and your philanthropy. You want to make sure that you're buying things that you need and not just buying a lot of things that you don't necessarily need. You want to transition away from companies that transition away from diversity on their corporate boards, executive leadership. They're not spending money with African American owned Black and brown businesses. They're not recruiting on Black and brown campuses across the country. I also typically recommend that from a discretionary spending standpoint, that you begin to take 50% of those discretionary dollars and begin to save and invest those dollars to build a next nest egg and to build an emergency fund in case something happens with your job if you're working, or something happens with your business. You want to be able to weather the storm. And I consider discretionary dollars to be those dollars that we're spending on things that we don't necessarily need, like salty snacks, soft drinks, fast foods, cigarettes, alcohol, recreational marijuana, that third and fourth watch, jewelry, and any unplanned or impulsive purchases that we might make. Those are dollars that you could be saving and investing. And if in saving and investing in the right way, you'll discover over time that grows fairly rapidly. Also, in our community, we have to begin to hold elected officials accountable for their community benefits commitments that they make during when they're running for office, and we need to hold them accountable without regard to their party affiliation or race or any of that. The bottom line is, did they deliver value for us as a part of their electorate? And is that helping us financially in terms of decisions that they may be making? If you work for a company and your company offers a 401k or 403b, you definitely want to be taking advantage of that. You want to be able to maximize your participation in that. And especially if your company has a matching 401k or 403b, you want to be able to not leave that money on the table. So you want to participate as fully as you possibly can. The other thing I recommended to family members and friends who have jobs, who are periodically receiving either bonuses or pay increases, is that you don't take those pay increases or those bonuses and live on those dollars. That is extra dollars that is coming in. To me, that's discretionary dollars, and those dollars should be saved and invested so that you can put yourself in a better financial situation. Next slide. Then additionally, you want to begin, if you're not already, to participate in the stock market. And one of the things I share with people is, when I first started investing in the stock market, I was not a stock market trained person. I did not learn about the stock market in school. I did not learn about the stock market in any of the circles that I was in. I come from a lower moderate income background. I didn't know anyone who was really investing in the stock market, with the exception of one of my best friend's father, Mr. Dillard. Mr. Dillard had an 8th grade education, worked for the state of New Jersey, drove the same car, and used to get teased about it for years from his fellow co-workers. A lot of them were buying new cars every 3 or 4 years. Mr. Dillard drove the same car throughout his 20 plus years of working for the state. Bought a new car after he retired, had established well over $1 million portfolio in the stock market. He was the only one in my neighborhood who I knew who read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and spent a lot of time on the stock pages. So I was exposed to that kind of mentality. And so when I got older and began to work and make my own money, one of the things I decided to do, since I was not a stock market genius, I decided I could build a stock portfolio based on products that I was aware of, products that I used growing up, products that my family and friends used. So you look in your own home. What are you driving? Is that a good product? What do you use to brush your teeth? What do you use to what's in your medicine cabinet? What kind of facial tissue do you use? Toilet tissue do you use? All these avenues are things that I consider they're disposable products that you either flush or throw away. And so these companies generate ongoing revenue because whatever it is you're using, you run out. And so I was able to establish a decent portfolio based on my knowledge of and use of various products, and built a portfolio around that. And then as you learn and grow, you can expand from there. The other thing is, if you work and you have a good job, I don't knock that. I worked myself for quite a number of years, but always had a business on the side. I started my real estate investment business about 3 years after my first banking job. And I maintained that for all those years. And now 40 plus years as a real estate investor has afforded me an opportunity to be able to do things that I would not have otherwise been able to do. And so I recommend to folks that if you have a job and you have some expertise in something, and you want to be able to really create some financial freedom for yourself, start a business, operate a business, and build a profitable enterprise so that you can have that freedom. And there's also the idea of financial literacy. I have here on the screen D-Free Academy. You can get them at www.dfreefoundation.org. They have the 12 steps of financial freedom. I highly recommend that. It's a really great learning tool and won't cost you anything. Next slide. So here we are at looks like the final slide here. My company here is Phillip Speaks LLC. I'm an author, speaker, and alternative lender. And my call to action for you guys is that basically, if you're looking for funding for your business, I facilitate funding for businesses and help them to basically get the funding they need to grow and expand their enterprises. We also have a book here, Triumph in the Trenches, Navigating Success for Black Professionals. That book is an anthology done with a number of co-authors, each of us sharing our lived experiences of how we navigated through our corporate workspaces. And a number of these shared experiences are also applicable to folks who are looking to either are already entrepreneurs or looking to transition to entrepreneurship. And so one of the things I like to share before we go to questions and answers is my why. So why am I here, and why am I doing what I currently do in terms of working to facilitate access to capital for businesses? So I'll share this story. On September 11th, 2001, when the terrorists were attacking the country, I happened to, at that time, be the vice president and fair lending manager for fair lending compliance for a federally chartered bank. I happened to be in Pentagon City, right across the highway from the Pentagon. And in that moment, I decided that my corporate climb was a lot less important to me than being able to spend more time with my family. My two daughters were much younger then, and I decided I wanted to spend 5 years at home. And so because I had established and built a successful real estate investment company, it took me about a year to transition out of my role. I had some unfinished business to take care of before I left the company, and also at the time served as the chair of the board of trustees for a charter school. And that charter school, once they learned I was leaving the bank, asked if I would come in for a short time to operate as the chief administrative officer for the charter school. I did that for about 15, 16 months. And then after that, from about 2003 to 2008, I was able to stay home and do some golfing and camping and traveling and spend 5 years home with my daughters. During that time, I think we had just gotten back from Disney World a couple of days prior. And then on that particular day, we had been out for golf lessons. And my youngest daughter at the time came and said that she kind of leaned back in her chair, looking back out over the backyard. And she said, "This is the life." And I said, "Vanessa, what did you say?" She said, "This is the life. Traveling, golfing, camping, just having a great time. This is the life." And that resonated with me. And what I began to think about was, what could I do and provide impact that other families could be positioned where their children felt like this is the life. And so, I do what I do because I want to be impactful, and I'm hoping to help families, help facilitate their success on their journey as they try to build and sustain their businesses, as they try to build and to sustain themselves from a financial freedom standpoint. So that's me in a nutshell. Great being with you guys today, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Wow. Wow. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for all of the nuggets that you shared. There was so many. And we are closer in the time. So, and look, and I have so many questions. Look at all the questions. I don't know where to start. So one, I wanted to, maybe this will be a shorter one. So I know you talked about C-suite, and a lot of people don't know what C-suite is. Can you
Oh,
explain
sure.
what C-suite is?
Oh, sure. So C-suite is the executive part of the company. Typically, that is the CEO, that is the chief financial officer. Some organizations may also have a chief marketing officer. So that's known as the C-suite. And one of the things I'll share with regard to C-suite, if you've ever been in an executive's office as CEO, and you walk in, sometimes you sit down at their desk and you see that their desk is clean and there's nothing there, right? And when I first started experiencing that, I kind of had in my mind, what is it these people do? There's nothing on their desk but a notepad and a ink pen, right? So what I begin to discover is that the reason why their desk was so clear and they had this pad is that they would jot down their thoughts and ideas, and then they have a team that implements and executes those ideas. So there's not a lot of clutter because they have a team of people who are getting things done. And so that's what you want to transition to in terms of how you run your business. You don't want to be the man or woman that's doing every single thing. That is not a recipe for long-term success. That is a recipe for lower revenues and higher anxiety.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things I say. If you want to be a thousandaire, you do it by yourself. If you want to be a millionaire,
Right.
you do a team.
Absolutely.
Because you cannot become a millionaire if you're trying to do everything by yourself. So thank
Absolutely.
you for oh my gosh, it was so much. So I know we have a lot of nonprofit organizations, including ourselves. One of the things you talked about was recycling positive cash flow. Are you able to recycle positive cash flow as a nonprofit organization?
Well, it depends on, some of that might be a better question for their CPA or the folks that were handling that for them. But what I would say is nonprofits certainly have the ability to have multiple streams of income. I typically recommend in the businesses, nonprofit organizations that I've been connected to over the years, that they build streams of income over and above their donation stream, because sometimes you may find yourself in a situation where organizations that are funding you begin to pull back. And if you want to be able to sustain yourself from the standpoint of handling your operational expenses, you need an avenue that's generating income over and above the donations that you might receive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And I think we're gonna have to have you come back because there were so many nuggets that you talked about. You talked about such a wide variety of things, from the personal to the business credit. And I actually had a lot of questions for the business credit, so I think it warrants you coming back. Because
All right.
business credit part, especially in our community, what I've seen is so many people are challenged with how to really build out their business credit. And I think it would behoove us, and maybe even if you would come back and do a workshop, maybe, and have people like really be going through the process. What sites should they be going to? Is there, let me ask you, is there a book that you would suggest that people read?
I don't have one at my fingertips in terms of that I could recommend.
Okay.
But the building of business credit is one of the services I offer. And so, folks who are ready to make that investment in terms of taking their business to the next level are certainly welcome to reach out to me for that. And be happy to work with them, on that. In terms of coming back, certainly happy to come back and spend some time with you guys again. And you and I can have some conversation about, what what that looks like and when that could happen.
Most definitely. Well, thank you again for all the wealth of knowledge and information that you've shared on today. We had a lot of people who are joining, who are jumping back and forth, messaging me on the side, all of that. So they're like, and I know that when you're talking about money, it's also one of those things that people are, they want to present a certain way. So if they ask a certain question, it's like, oh, are you going to think that I don't have the money, or, think that's me? And
oh yeah.
A lot of times in those spaces, I'm like, you have to bear it all, right? In order to grow. If you bear it all, then you are putting up a facade on yourself that you will never grow out of or grow from.
Oh yeah.
I definitely encourage people.
So if you have, certainly if you have trusted advisors, you want to develop a relationship with them that allows you to put it all on the table so you can get the best possible advice. Otherwise, you're getting skewed advice based on limited knowledge and information of your actual situation.
Totally agree. Well, thank you again, Phillip, for your time. I'm going to put you backstage as we close out for the session.
Okay.
We get over time, but that is okay. You are very welcome. So it's a busy time. We're going towards the end of the year. We have 1 more week? No, 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks. But 1 more lunch and learn before the end of the year. We do have a number of events that we have coming up for us. This Sunday, we are doing a toy distribution. We are giving out over 600 toys. We'll have a autism awareness fashion show. We will be highlighting a number of things in that space as well. So we definitely look forward to you. It is by registration, so please do go to the JuneteenthNY.com website to make sure that you are registered. The event will go from 12 to 4 p.m. The fashion show will begin at 3 and toys will be given out after. You do need to be there early because once you're in, you're in. And after that, if we have any toys left, we will be glad to give them out. But we have a wait list for those for toys. So we are definitely excited and encourage you to come out for that. Next up, after that, we have on the 28th, we're going to be doing our Kwanzaa celebration. But starting on the 26th, the first day of Kwanzaa, we will be back here. It'll be our last day, and we are encouraging you to join us for that. On the front for Juneteenth, we are nominating our Black Kings. So if you have a Black King that you know of that has been doing something amazing in this world and you would like to nominate them, please do. You can go to our website again, the JuneteenthNY.com, in order to do that as well. And then we're also looking for our fashion show, fashion models, designers, and other talent in the fashion industry for our fashion show that will be happening in June. So if you are interested in that, please sign up. Like we are in the sign up phase. We are closing out a lot of our registrations the beginning of February so that we can do a lot of the groundwork. It takes a lot of work to do an event that has 7,000 to 10,000 people in attendance. There's a lot of background stuff that goes into that, as you can only imagine, because a lot of people, if you're doing a wedding that's only 200 people or less, you're planning for an entire year. So just think about what we're doing year after year to plan for this. So I think that is all that we got going on before the end of the year, and that is a lot. But we are excited and looking forward to the coming year, 2025, and all the blessings that it has. So if I don't see you before the end of the year and you don't join us next week, I want to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and happy Kwanzaa. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.